Right, welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Jordan Peele is back to horror with Candyman, a cult classic and a much-loved horror film. Now, although Jordan Peele isn't directing this, he is writing it and he is producing it. So this is firmly his film and his vision. Now, many people have hailed Jordan Peele as the next big thing in horror. Get Out was arguably a huge success for Mr. Peele, and then he followed it up with Us, a film that wasn't so well received and sadly, in my view, wasn't very well written. An example of style over any substance, as the film falls apart the moment you think about it. And now he has been enlisted for many numerous projects, one of them being Candyman, as he's believed to be the next big thing, the next great thing in horror writing, a true lightning in the bottle embodied in a man. Unfortunately, what I am about to tell you is the penny dropping on Mr. Peele, his true shtick being revealed, and sadly his one-note writing. I have learned from my sources that there was recently a test screening for the upcoming Candyman film, and I have details on the plot, the racial elements, along with gentrification being a focus and a very heavy-handed one, and the elusive Tony Todd's involvement. So as this is all from my personal sources, please do consider this all rumour at this point in time because you're not going to be able to verify it elsewhere. However, I would encourage you to only go back and look at other leaks that I have provided for my resume on trustworthy content. And also, it's important to note that this was only a test screening, so there is potential that some things can be changed. However, certain things like plot cannot, unless they reshoot and rewrite the entire movie. So that being said, let's jump into this big pile of disappointment. So, straight from the outset, it is best to set the scene on how the audience generally received the movie. This is a test screening, and they are there for their opinions. Sadly, the general feel is that the audience wanted to like it, they had every desire to be enthralled in the movie, but were left wanting. Now, the film itself has too many loose ends, with a very lumpy pacing. It is very, very slow all the way through the movie and then becomes a race to the finish line. So very, very bad pacing. It is almost as if the filmmakers didn't quite understand what film they were writing or had to have the film cut down. Either or, it's resulted in a movie that is very slow until the end, where it then attempts to round itself up, tying everything together in one go, but it misses the mark. Also, and very sadly, it is not a very gory film, and it's not scary. And essentially, and I quote, it is an average film, at best. Now, for Tony Todd, as his involvement in this movie has been under wraps for some time, but everyone has wanted him to come back, and many fans, again, have stated, yes, we want him to return. And also, his return to this, as the Candyman, is really a great opportunity for the filmmakers to expand the mythos whilst also paying some homage to the original and getting the original actor on board as a seal of approval, but unfortunately they have completely wasted this opportunity. Tony Todd is not seen in the film at all. His character is mentioned, as is Helen, but they are not seen or shown, which, as mentioned already, is a great travesty in respect to a wasted potential. In fact, they go a step further to insult the legacy of the Candyman, and instead of Tony Todd as the Candyman, they have another random person being another Candyman, Rodney King. So it's a very odd decision. You have Tony Todd teased, you mention him, but you don't bring him back, and you do in fact have someone else as another Candyman. Ridiculous. Now this goes into another plot point in the movie. The Candyman Phantom is actually now a multiple situation. There are more than one, hence the random Rodney King Candyman. So what they are doing here is setting up something called, in the movie, and I quote, The Hive, which is obviously pertaining to Tony Todd being the original Candyman, and then something related to the bees. In fact, the bees are integral here in creating this hive of Candymen, as Yahya gets stung by one, and during the film, his body slowly takes on a charred-like appearance. Big plot twist, though! And further relating to the annoyance of why Tony Todd was not back, Yahya is actually the baby that is seen in the first film, the sacrificial baby. So he is literally connected to the first film, but they have another Candyman and not Tony Todd in the film, with zero connection to the character that Yahya is playing. What? Why do that? That's ridiculous. However, to chuck some positives in there, the score is apparently very good for the film. So there is something good there. It apparently holds the tone very well and it keeps you engaged in that regard. However, the lack of fear for the movie is a shame. The practical effects shots were good, and unfortunately, being an early test screening, the CGI wasn't completed, so my source couldn't get a gauge on the quality, but that's not going to improve the film much anyway, so we don't really mind too much about that. Now let's talk about the majorly bad. Yes, we haven't even got there yet. Jordan Peele and his racial shtick that he keeps putting in movies. So in this one, there is a very heavy-handed focus on gentrification with respect to black men and women in the projects, along with, you guessed it, police brutality aimed at black people. Now, the gentrification and race issue is the main issue, and it's extremely heavy-handed. Now, it's important to note that the original movie obviously touched on this, but nowhere near to this degree, and I can see why Jordan Peele chose this as his next project now, because based off of this, he is using it purely as a vehicle to discuss racial issues, but in a less than nuanced way. Now, the main plot and how Yahya becomes a Candyman is all tied to the bee that stung him when he returned to the projects, and how he was the baby that was going to be sacrificed. But it's implemented with police murdering him whilst he's defenceless on the floor. And, oh yes, some sweet, sweet police corruption as well. So from what my source told me, the character played by Domingo is obsessed with the Candyman legend. He is the man that knows all about the legend, the history, and everything else. He is utterly obsessed because Candyman killed his sister. Now, for whatever reason, he is trying to keep the urban legend of Candyman alive, and he does this by attempting to get Yahya turned into another Candyman. So the way he does this is by calling the cops on Yahya, telling them that he is going crazy, he's out here attacking people with a hook. Domingo's character and the girlfriend of Yahya in the movie at this point in time are arguing and they're fighting, and Yahya, somewhere along the line, has had his hand sawn off by Domingo. My source wasn't clear whether this was in the altercation or it was something previous, but either way, he's there and he collapses on the floor, bleeding out, obviously. So he's a defenseless black man on the floor, and yeah, you guessed it, the police show up and they shoot him dead for literally no reason, just because, yeah, you guessed it, he's black. Now this is where it gets even more on the heavy-handed side, because they take the girlfriend into the squad car and they state to her, "You are lying for us. You're going to testify for us that we did nothing wrong, or we're going to chuck you in jail." Now the girlfriend asks to see herself in the mirror, and yes, she then goes to say Candyman 5 times and Yahya rises from the dead. Oh, and guess what now? Some sweet Jordan Peele shtick. He proceeds to get his revenge on the police officers, killing them. Great. And apparently that's the end of the movie. And I quote my source, it seemed very pandery. So look, I genuinely think this sounds like garbage. Even if we remove the racial issues, which are obviously going to put a lot of people off, right? We remove them from the situation. We have Tony Todd being wasted with an introduction to a new nonsensical Candyman that has no connection to anyone, despite Yahya has a connection to the original Tony Todd Candyman. And then we have this new Hive thing, which could be interesting to a certain degree, but why don't you have the original Candyman back? You can do all of this while still having Tony Todd in the movie. It sounds like trash. Personally, I'm not looking forward to this, but hey, look, there you go. What do you think? Let me know down below in the comment section. If you're new here, hit subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. Please do check if you are a returning subscriber that you are subscribed, and also that your bell notifications are turned on to all. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'm Mr. H. Take care.